Welcome to The Passion Pod with your host, Chris Johnson. Thanks for joining us. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the feature presentation.
Season 7, Episode 7.
Welcome back, friends. Today we're hanging out with some unique characters. My dining room has never felt so close to being a real jungle. Along with all these snakes, I'm also stoked to have their breeder to keep me safe. Welcome to the show, PB&J's Pythons, aka the owner, Justin Schwartz.
What's up?
Dude, thank you for coming over to my house. Thank you for sharing your snakes with me. We got to just take a bunch of pictures posing, and it was pretty dope. My ex-wife had a small ball python, so I was like a little bit used to them, but yours are really cool, like the coloring, and we'll get to it, but those things were really, really sweet. So who are you, and what are you passionate about?
I'm Justin Schwartz from Eau Claire, and so far I've been passionate about snakes and now breeding them, and then I guess realistically cars, and I've been trying to get into glass blowing and a couple other little side hobbies to fill in the void, but that's mostly it.
Cool. Do you do anything else creative outside of, like, have you been into art and stuff, or what was the glass blowing thing? I'm curious about that.
In high school, I was really, really big into ceramics class, and
cool.
Ceramics is just kind of out of my reach. I can't find any studio space where that's even a possibility for me.
Sure.
But there's tons of glass blowers that are really, really opening. So
yeah. So you just got some interest in doing some creative things.
Something.
Cool. So how can people best follow you and get in contact, see the snakes and your whole story?
So we have Facebook and all that, but the number one way is going to always be Instagram.
Okay. What's the Instagram handle?
At PBJ Pythons.
Easy enough. We're going to post about it, so it should be easy to find. What was your first pet as a kid?
Cats and dogs, typical house pets.
Sure. And tell me the story. We might as well get right to this, because I was going to ask you when you got your first snake. But I'm afraid of spiders, and I'm still afraid of spiders. Now, over time, I'm a single parent, right? And I got a decent size house that's not brand new, which means spiders exist. It's a split level. My bedroom is downstairs, which means it's half underground, which means there's definitely spiders down there.
Double the spiders.
Oh my God, for real. So I've gotten used to them enough. And because when my kids scream in the middle of the night, I'm the one who has to go up and squish the thing. I've gotten used to them. I still do not like spiders. So I've been trying to overcome fears for like quite a while. I went to this place, where was it? In St. Louis. They had like a little zoo. And they were handing around snakes, and they had some big ones. Like I held this big constrictor they put around my, over my shoulders and all that. And this other lady was holding a tarantula, and she was like handing it around to kids. And it was a 2-floor place. Not kidding, for a solid like 10 minutes, I was like under my breath, like, you could do this. Yeah, you're going to do it. This thing's just not even whatever. Like, don't be a and like I couldn't get myself to hold it. So
I don't think I ever could.
Yeah, they freak me out. I know they're not really going to do anything, but they freak me out. So anyways, tell me about your first experience with a snake.
So it was about a year ago, actually. August 17th of 2020 would that have been? Yeah. We actually started a Reptile Rescue, not like a full-on 501(c) or whatever, but we're taking them in from friends that just didn't want them anymore and whatnot. So we had a lot of lizards and stuff.
And this was you and your fiance?
Yep.
And she's the other half of, what's her name?
Paige.
So she's the other half of PB&Js.
Yep.
Dope.
So it's Paige and Justin, and these are our balls, is how we came up with that. Oh.
Perfect. So you and Paige had a rescue thing.
Yep. And then we ended up, our buddy was just like, well, my snake needs a place for a little bit, blah, blah, blah. And I had never held a snake. I was deathly afraid of him. I told him before, he had said, let me bring my snake over. You got all these reptiles, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, nope, don't even want it in my house. And one day he ended up suckering me into it, brought it over, and I just kind of got ballsy. I guess I was out of my mindset and went for it, and I've just been hooked ever since.
What was the feeling like? I know everyone knows as an adult that they're not slimy, but was it like different than what you were kind of expecting?
Oh, completely. When I was a little kid, the fear came from stepping on a snake as a little kid, like a garter snake or something in the yard. And just that weird slithery, it felt slimy because it was so cold and quick. And then I'd been irrational ever since, like.
How old were you?
I was probably like 7.
And were you like barefoot where you actually felt it?
Yeah.
Ooh. What did it do when you stepped on it?
It just kind of slithered under my foot and went away, and I ran the other way, and that's been my relationship ever since.
Oh, no.
But now I'm over that, and countless snakes.
Sure. Yeah, so when I was a kid, like we all play with garter snakes around here, right? Because they're garden snakes? Garter snake? Garter, I thought so. So garter snakes. But we always played with them as kids. So I would pick them up, and up at my cabin, they'd be in like the wood pile and stuff. And so we would always play with them. Well, anyways, one day, so I was not afraid of them at all. Then one day I was up in Duluth because I went to college up in Duluth, and we went to, I think it was actually at the zoo. But then we were just kind of in the park area walking around, and I saw one and just recklessly was like going to go pick it up. It had been years and years since I'd picked one up. I didn't think much of it. And I reached down to grab it, and it curled up and it sprung, like it full on jumped off the ground towards my face, and its face open, like fully, like 180 degree wide open, shooting at my face.
Oh yeah.
And this is a tiny little snake, but even so, that thing came up so fast, and I jumped right back like, oh my God. And from then I was like, I don't know if I like these things as much as I thought I did. Now I like picture that happening. And so I was like kind of not really into them for a while until that experience I told you about in St. Louis, where I was like, okay, I don't need to be bothered by snakes anymore because I know they're not a big deal and I know why that thing did it to me, but I want to make sure that I'm cool. And I held that big thing.
And that's another big difference between like wild snakes and captive bred snakes and that's another thing why we do this, is to produce more of those captive bred snakes that are intriguing, but at the same time also friendly versus that snappy defensiveness. Because, I mean, if you think about it, you've got no arms, no legs, nothing. Your only defense is to bite back or curl up and pretend to die. So it's a scary place.
Have you ever been bitten by a snake?
Not yet.
No, hopefully that just never happens. Well, so snakes, I guess, right? Because they're bred to be in captivity like that, they don't really have any reason to attack.
Right. As long as they're fed, realistically, it's temperament of the snake. And I haven't personally met snakes that are just fully rude, I guess.
Sure.
I've met snakes that are hunger driven, and like if you don't feed them, they're going to eat, and it's going to either be you or a rodent, whatever they need it to be.
Yeah.
But if you maintain your snakes and keep good care of them, snakes are awesome animals.
So you held this one for the first time. Your friend was like, hey, hold my snake. What kind of snake was that?
Ball python.
And how big was it approximately? Like how old was it?
Not much bigger than the ones that we took pictures with. So maybe like 7 months old, 8 months old. So
okay.
Just a little baby.
Cool. And then immediately after that, Paige held it.
Yep.
Did you have to like coerce her into it?
Nope.
She was just stoked on it because
to
you
be
were stoked
honest,
on it?
she went first.
Oh, she went first.
That was my condition. In order for me to hold the snake, Paige had to hold it first because we were both just deathly afraid. And
sure.
I'm not about to do it if she's not gonna.
Sure. And did you keep it then that night from then on, or did he just like bring it over and then bring it back home?
Nope. He brought it over, and then he just kept bringing it over for like just periods where he needed our help, I guess.
Sure.
But yeah, then from there on, we bought our snake the next day, and just been kind of going with it.
And you bought a ball python the next day?
Yep.
As just like a little baby, or how big was that one?
Yep, we ordered it from a breeder down in Milwaukee. I don't know if I should shout him out at all, Slutky Serpents.
Cool.
And he's been super helpful, but the biggest help to us was Paige's Pythons from Wausau. She's been a big kind of key factor to us.
Sure. Did you have to drive down to Milwaukee to get them?
Nope.
No.
Shipping's actually super easy for snakes and super like
How does that work? It just shows up in a box at someone's house?
totally like in a little mesh bag and with a heat pack sometimes, depending on the weather. And
Who does it ship through? Like FedEx?
yeah, UPS, FedEx.
I can't imagine a UPS driver just like picking up his packages for the day and there's just a snake sitting in a bag. Like, what if the driver is afraid of I don't know, whatever. Okay. When did you guys start the reptile rescue thing? How long were you doing that for?
To be honest, I was only probably like 7 or 8 months that we did that full time. Like, that was our main thing. We were living off of it even for a while because it just seemed like there were that many animals that needed help. You would get them quarantined for 30 days, get them back to health, and get rid of them, basically, as bad as that sounds. But like, I don't have room for 170 reptiles, and that's probably close to what we saved in that short period.
Wow. So you'd quarantine them for 30 days, nurse them back, and then you'd sell them?
Well, I guess selling sounds bad, but yeah, in a way.
Well, you do like a rehoming with
Yep.
a fee and stuff. Yeah,
We'd
totally.
compensate for what we did. You know,
Sure.
if we had to take them to the vet, then that was added on to the rehoming fee. But mostly it was just a non-profit thing. We have sponsors. We
Sure.
still get bugs and other things from our sponsors and stuff, just not in as high of a supply because we converted over doing mostly ball pythons.
Sure. Well, it is important to note too, you know, if you're trying to dedicate like a pretty significant amount of time to something, when I was saying like selling, there does have to be some money involved because people have to make money. You can only like strictly volunteer so much of your time. And if there's nobody else that's there to share the load, but there's still the need for it, you do have to get paid. I mean, it's not like you're making a lot of money, but you still have to pay bills. So I think and I think most people get that, you know what I mean? If you look honestly at like larger nonprofits, they have people getting paid way too much, you know,
yeah.
but I'm in that position where like, I feel bad asking for any kind of money for anything that I do. But at the same time, I'm a single dad. I have a lot of bills to pay. And I've had people say, well, don't you do it? It's because you're passionate about it. That's why you do it. I'm like, well, yes, but I own a store. And yes, I'm passionate about skateboarding and helping kids get into the whole, you know, industry and the lifestyle. And I am passionate about all that. But I do have to make money ultimately. You know what I mean?
Number one passion is survival.
That's exactly it. So I'm not a money driven person, but that does kind of have to come with the territory. And I know for myself, I personally have to get a little bit more. I have to actually care about making money slightly more, just because like I got divorced last year. So now I'm like working off one person's income to pay for my house, my kids, my business. And it's like, I do have to spend a little bit more time on that. What about, so getting back to the reptiles, what was the first reptile you ever had?
Bearded dragon.
When did you get that?
Oh, God. Couldn't even tell you. It would have been sometime late 2019.
Oh, okay. So now you really hadn't been doing stuff with reptiles for all that crazy long then.
Oh, God, no. It's pretty recent to me.
Sure. How are you able to get people to like trust you? How'd you get the nonprofit set up? Did you just put on Facebook, hey, I'll take care of your animals, or like how'd that work?
For the most part, a big part of it, I think, was the fact of getting a sponsor that was reputable behind us, someone that would back us. One of our our team members, he's actually on our board of directors, was from Simpton black soldier fly, which is a huge source of protein for like insectivores and such. So having that name behind us kind of helped with that process, I guess. Like, I don't know. And a big part of it for us, like you were saying with the money and how other shelters do it and stuff, a big part of it was we didn't charge to take animals in, whereas most of them do. Most of them will charge $150 for an exotic animal just to take it in. And then again, when they rehome it, you know, so we tried to cut that out, and we were mostly focused on just, okay, if we got a 40-gallon tank for this much, we got this for this much. We're just trying to recoup our money and try to make sure the animals are our priority, and it's always been that since the first lizard till now. We started with the intention of saving an animal from Petco, which realistically we bought one bearded dragon and they put 3 more back in the same crappy little tank. So
Sure.
did we really do anything good? Probably not.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
it sparked that interest to help with other animals. And then the next one we got was just deathly condition. We actually just nursed him until he ended up passing away because it was so bad. And that really actually hit. Like, I cried for hours after he passed away because we had put so much time and money into it. And I was like, well, we gotta keep going. We gotta keep doing this because, like, there's so much of it. There's so much neglect in the reptile community. It's mind-blowing.
I mean, it makes sense that it happens, right? Because something like a dog, it'll make sure you know that it needs something, right? Because it can not talk, but it can go up and it can scratch its bowl and it can bark at you and it can whimper and, like, you know that it needs something. But something like a snake or any of those types of pets, I mean, even tarantulas and stuff, people buy them for their kids. They buy them kind of I think a lot of times on a whim, right? And they don't know how to take care of them. And honestly, the people at a lot of these big stores, you know, a Petco or something, aren't very educated themselves because they don't, and you can't even blame the employee because they're not really getting paid very much. It's not like they go to school for it. They get a whatever retail job. That's what they think, you know, and they want to help. And they're peddling these animals. And it's not their fault. It's the company setting itself up for a profit rather than for the right reasons, you know?
100%.
And that kind of like gets out of people's hands as companies get bigger, they become publicly traded. Now ethics start to, you know, become not as important as the profit of the company, you know, versus like a small business, your reputation is significantly more important than the profit. The money will come if you do the right things for long enough and you do the right things by people, you know, but you can't, the focus is just totally different. So it makes sense that would happen. So you were doing that for a while, then you got the snake. When was the second snake that you got? Like, how long was it between getting the first one before you got the second one?
Well, first we had gotten our snake. It was our pet snake. We ordered it from Slotki, like I said, and then we started taking in rescue snakes because we were doing the rescue thing. So traveling up to St. Paul and picking up ball pythons, over to Green Bay, down to Madison. We've all over the state driving to pick up animals and bring them back to try to bring them back to health. And then once you get to 5 or 6 snakes and you buy another one and keep going, and noticed that the snakes just kind of never left. I never tried to get rid of them, never wanted to rehome them, and then realized how I could make different snakes, different morphs, and progress my part of the hobby and my contributions to the hobby. And that was a big motivation to get into the breeding, was just to be able to contribute something, because even saving 170 animals, I wasn't doing anything for the reptile community.
Sure.
If anything, I was still getting shit on every day for being a fake rescue or not applying for a 501(c) or whatever. So
Well, there's a lot. I mean, for one, there's going to be haters no matter what, right?
Oh,
like, people like drama and they're just going to do that. And a 501(c), it's one of those things where people are quick to point a finger without really knowing what they're talking about. And to actually have a 501(c), for anyone listening that isn't aware, that's like the basic nonprofit that people will do. You have to have a board of directors and you have to have monthly meetings where you keep minutes and all this. It's like a fairly complicated thing that you can't really do with 1 or 2 people. You have to have more people involved. Not even talking about fees or anything else attached to it. So what's really unfortunate, at least in America, I'm sure it's in a lot of countries, is from my experience, because I've done a lot of things with the city, and now I'm a city official. I'm on the Parks and Waterways Commission, and I'm doing, making some decisions and working on some different projects through that. But what I've found is there's all this red tape kind of in the way, preventing people from doing a good thing. It's like discouraging people from wanting to help out because they have to jump through all these hoops before they can even try to do something. So you said you got the snake, and then after that you started kind of rescuing more snakes, and now all of a sudden you got 5, you got 6. For one, where did you get the tanks, and do you just have these things like in your house? How did you have space for all of these things?
So we started, it was Nova Pet Animal Rescue. We started that in a upper bedroom, two bedroom apartment that was tiny, and we dedicated one whole room to just being the reptile room. It was lined every wall with aquariums, tanks, and it was absolutely miserable. That room was like 130 degrees constantly. It was uncomfortable. It stunk. It was just a bad scenario. And that's just part of it. It comes with it. Animals, they poop constantly. You have 60 of them. One's laid down a fresh poop every day, all day. It's just the way it is. So we ended up moving. We bought it's a trailer we bought here in Eau Claire. And we physically couldn't keep them all. We couldn't do all the tanks and everything. And the snakes is where that comes into a big play. Snakes only require these small tubs, I wouldn't call it minimum care, because we've given snakes to friends and they put them in a huge 40-gallon on display and they stop eating. And they bring them back to our house, we throw them back in their tub, and they'll go back on food instantly. And it's every requirement they need, humidity-wise, space-wise, they're comfortable. You'll have people argue that all day. That's not what we're here to talk about. Anyways, we realized you can fit a lot of snakes into a small area, and we started to downsize the other reptiles and started to get rid of them before we were moving. And when we moved, we ended up having snakes in every room and in a trailer. You can sit on our couch and not touch over and see and touch a tank from a bearded dragon or iguana, Chinese water dragons, all kinds of different things. So that's slowly phased out, and now it's just mostly snakes. I think we got 3 bearded dragons, our iguana, and a leopard gecko otherwise. And then
About how many snakes do you have?
it's constantly changing because you either sell one, buy one, whatever. But I think right now we're at about 46.
Oh, whoa.
With only 2 being not ball pythons.
Sure.
And that would be my tree boa, which is the largest fanged non-venomous snake. And that's why I got it. I just thought it was kind of a cool factor. And then my fiance Paige has the Brazilian rainbow boa, which is one of the coolest visual snakes I think anyone will ever see. It's got these cool little spots on it. It's bright orange color with like a iridescent rainbow sheen to it. Super cool snake. Not very friendly. And then the rest are just ball pythons. We have, like I said, I think with the adults, there's like 38 of them, and then we just had 4 that we hatched ourselves for the first time.
So when did you, the ones you hatched right now are the very first ones you've bred?
Yep, those are our first PB&J pythons.
Wild. Okay, so tell me about that. When did you have the idea that you specifically wanted to breed them, and how did that experience go? How'd you find the 2 that worked out? Like, I have no idea how the snakes mate or anything. I just know they like hatch eggs, but that's it.
So we started out with most of our snakes that we got at first, whether it was rescues or purchasing, were mostly small, because a lot of people get snakes and within 6 months they decide, I don't want snakes. So then we would end up acquiring those snakes. We had tons of little snakes, and most of them were your standard normal ball python, which super beautiful at the end of the day, but it's the wild type. It's what's everywhere I could find you one for $10 tomorrow, which is why we actually donate all the profits from normal ball pythons, because we've gotten in a few more since and sold them off because we don't have a use for them. They're not genetically anything we can do with them. Anything that we profit from that gets donated to USARK, which helps fight back with the reptile bans and such. And that's a big part of it for us, is just something that we can give back.
Sure. So you were getting all these small snakes. So when you had the idea to breed them, you had two bigger ones, or like talk about that process to getting this first hatching.
Well, we started buying them. We were buying them small, and then we decided we wanted to breed, and therefore you have to wait until they're a certain weight and certain maturity.
Approximately how long is that?
For females, it tends to be about 3 years is a good safe. They're almost guaranteed after 3 years, whether their weight is perfect or not. You know, they're gonna be mature enough to produce babies. A male, you can get ready in a little under a year, realistically,
Oh, wow.
and they're not shooting blanks no more. They're ready to go. And then we decided to speed up the process in a way. Because we were buying snakes small, we wanted to know what genetics we had in our snakes to be able to produce our babies in the future. And we just too eager, so we ended up buying a couple bigger ball pythons that were unbred, and we produced these snakes here with those two. And then since then, we've acquired a few more that are ready, but it's kind of fallen towards the later part of the breeding season. So we're just kind of waiting till next year so that we have a larger amount of snakes at once that we can deal with versus spread out all year round dealing with this.
Sure. So do you just like put the two in a tank and you like leave some heart chocolates, or like how do you know if they want to breed or anything?
So I'm not really sure on the want, because I'm not still set on whether snakes feel emotion or not. I know that I can tell you there's snakes that love me and love my friends that don't like Paige. Whether she's 20 feet away or next to them trying to feed them,
Yeah.
they're just not a friend.
Sure.
So I don't say that they have emotion and can really feel the want to breed with each other or not,
Sure.
but male and a female, throw them in the same tub and hope that they go for it. If not, try a different pairing, and
Sure.
it just kind of works out that way.
How long does it take? How do you know that a snake is even pregnant? And then how long does it take before she lays the eggs?
So from start to finish, let's say we pick out a snake. We would put them in together for about 2 to 3 days, and we would watch for a visual lock. They wrap their tails together kind of like a genetic DNA coil, you know, they just twist around each other. And when they've done that, they're now paired, their sex, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
And then once they're done with that, you can either separate them or you can wait the remainder of that 2 to 3 days. We typically separate them right away once they're done. And then you can wait 2 to 3 weeks, put those same two back together, or you could put a different male in with that female and try to go for like a split clutch, because snakes are common, I guess, to do that, where they'll take the sperm from both dads and then produce offspring using both. So you can kind of get like a genetic firework in a way, which is kind of cool, but you never really know what you're going to get then. And then identifying what your snakes are is kind of a challenge.
Sure.
So you can put them back together, and then once you notice your females ovulate, is what it's called, they just kind of swell up in the tail section like a football almost, and
Sure.
that'll last for 24 to 72 hours. You know, I guess I'm not your perfect spokesperson for this, because I've only seen and done it with the one female so far, but
Right.
We've had a lot of help, so I've seen the process with pictures and videos and gone and seen other breeders and such. And the biggest thing after ovulation is to just watch them, I guess, because a lot of them are going to go off food, and that's fine. Or a lot of them will pound food, and that's fine. It's just kind of a variation. It's just like with any other pregnancy, you know.
Sure.
Your wife gets pregnant, she might be eating pickles with peanut butter, or she might not even know until month 8 when she's swollen up and wondering what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
So every snake's different. Every snake's always going to be different. And it's maybe a 6-7 month process for
the pregnancy is 6 to 7 months for a
from
snake.
start to eggs hatching and like babies crawling around.
Wow.
Because you have a few 60 days after ovulation, they will lay the eggs.
Okay.
And then another, it's like 55 days after that, then they'll hatch the eggs.
What do the snakes like a hen sit on top of their eggs, or like what do you do with the eggs for that 55 days?
So they do in the wild. They will actually incubate their eggs themselves. They'll coil around them. And you can do that. There is a lot of breeders out there that do that. We chose incubation, so we have an incubator set up in our house. We take the mom off the egg pyramid, I guess you could call it, and take her eggs from her. We put them embryo up, throw them in the incubator, and wait.
And she doesn't get aggressive when you do that or anything?
They do tend to, from my experience with like other people's and such. Our female was awesome. She was a first-time mom, and through the whole experience was wonderful to us. And didn't ever, like I said, I still haven't been bit, so
Sure.
I don't really know aggressive snakes. I haven't, other than my tree boa and the Brazilian, I haven't met crazy snakes.
Sure.
And if I did, I feel like it's compatible. Like, just with my tree boa, I just don't get in his face. I don't put my hands near him. I'm not.
Yeah, well, that's the thing with wildlife and animals in general. Like people, this is why I try to explain to people, because I'm a scuba diver, right? And so people will ask me like, aren't you afraid of sharks? And I try to explain to them, humans are not natural prey for anything. An animal is not going to attack you out of hunger. The only reason that they're going to attack you is because they're afraid of you. That is it. So as long as you don't make it afraid of you, and almost every animal I'm aware of will give warning signs that they're afraid. You know what I mean? So there's really no reason that they should attack you unless you're the one really blowing it. It's the same way with dogs and stuff too. And with that, like if a dog is kind of aggressive, it's because it's been in a situation where it felt unsafe for a long period of time. But you're very right. You can curve that. If you show it the right kind of attention and care, that attitude will totally change too. And that happens with, I think, a lot of different animals. You can see that. So with the breeding, you said, like, I'm sorry if maybe I'm asking too much about this, but I'm just really interested. Fine. So there's a breeding season. Like, how many eggs does does a snake hatch, I guess? Like, how many do they lay? And then how often how many times can they have a pregnancy? How far apart are they? Okay, so we had 5 eggs total. Okay. 1 egg slugged out, it's just the term that they use for a bad egg. We put it in the incubator and gave it a shot, and it ended up just molding out within the first week, so we tossed it. It was nothing in there. But we've had friends with 11, 12 eggs out of a clutch. We've had people that post just 1 little egg. So it's kind of like dogs in a way. You know, you can have a wide range, and I think it mostly depends on the maturity of the snake, how many she's produced in the past. Like next year, that female might produce 8 or 9 snakes, and that adds value to her once she's proven as a breeder that she will produce eggs. So that mom's gone. She won't be back because we have her offspring that'll be a more genetic powerhouse for the future. So how many times can they get pregnant? Because you wait till they're 3, right? And they live, well, snakes can live for a while, right? How long can a ball python live on average? See, that's another thing a lot of people debate on. I don't. Sure. And I haven't been around it long enough to really know, I guess, or meet someone that's had a ball python its entire life. Sure. But I know they just posted something about a ball python reaching like 75 years or something like that. Okay. But that seems unlikely or very rare. I think it'd be more in the 20 to 30 year range is like a solid. And we actually have one we got as a rescue that was,
I think 18 years old, he said, that he
Okay.
had since he was like 6, and he was in his early 30s. So
Sure.
it was an old snake.
Sure.
And so I'm not 100% sure on
Sure.
a set number, but they produce babies once a year.
Okay, once a year.
Yep.
And there's a specific season or not really?
There is and there isn't. So you can simulate a season because they're in a closed habitat.
Sure, yeah.
You can regulate and drop the temperatures and up the humidities, and you can adjust everything and create your perfect storm. Or you can just kind of let things happen naturally, and in the fall time they'll start pairing up and
Sure.
get active, and then spring they'll lay, and about this time of year you're cutting eggs. And
Sure.
yeah, it's a long but easy process, I guess, because a lot of it's just waiting game.
Right. So you got to wait till they're 3 to like have like to try, right?
Yep.
Are they good to go for a long period of time? Can they be 10 years old and be breeding?
Yeah, the one that we had that was 17 actually just went off because, like I said, it was a rescue
Sure.
one. Went off to one of our buddies who paired it up right away, and
Wow.
she ovulated. And
So
should be-
one mom could put out a ton of snakes in its lifetime,
Oh, yeah.
realistically. Wow. Okay. So I'm starting to get where that comes in. So now you were telling me before that part of it is you want to be able to breed them to make different. So I went to a reptile expo a while ago, and they charge different amounts, even just for their ball pythons, based on the patterns. Right.
Yep.
So that's like a whole part of it that I don't really understand. Like it's more rare to have certain patterns or whatever. How's that work really? And why do people care? What are you trying to do with that?
So, like I mentioned with the normal ball python, they come from West Africa, I do believe.
Yeah.
And just that section of West Africa mostly contains those normal ball pythons. And when they breed and they pair, there's genetic mutations along the years. You know, there might be a random yellow snake born, or 2 snakes that have a funky pattern that's similar, and people will notice that stuff and they pick it up, they bring it back here, they breed those 2 together, and out will pop a crazy snake no one's even seen before, you know. So something like that. There's the first pied ball python, which is the almost all white snake with just splotches of color. I think sold for like $100,000 because it was like the first different morph. It was the first new thing that was just mind-blowing.
Sure.
And then same thing with albinos, and over the years you just develop and find these new patterns and mutations from breeding snakes that don't look like anything. You know, they look standard ball pythons, and once you pair 2 together that share that same genetic trait, it's like the 4th of July. I don't even know. So, and that's kind of what we go for. So we don't have any of that like world's first or anything
Right.
imported from Africa. Everything we know is standard. We don't have $9,000 genes that we've bought into or anything like that. But a big thing is just different combinations. So like if per se the ones I brought, we had a black pastel and then we had a chocolate pastel lesser. So that's a 3 gene animal and a 1 gene animal. The maximum you can get then from that baby would be all 4, which we didn't get. The one that I brought with is just a chocolate black pastel, and it's the coolest one I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Like, so to be able to produce something like that and see something that there's not pictures of snakes that look like him, or there's not.
Yeah.
I can't give that away. I can't reproduce that, and that's awesome to me. That's my favorite thing in the world, is being able to produce something that no one else has, no one else can have. And like there's other chocolate black pastels, but there is not one that dark that looks anywhere near like him, and it blows my mind.
Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of crazy to think about like what nature is capable of doing. You know what I mean? It's like almost its own art in some kind of way.
Exactly. That we call it living art.
Totally.
That's what breeding snakes is to us. It's our living art, and that's why I wanted to get into the glass blowing. And I have a really creative passion, but no sources. I had nothing to let it out. I've been working 9 to 5s my whole life so far.
Yeah, you got to find some kind of outlet that makes sense. You know what I mean? And not everybody's going to use a paintbrush. There's always going to be different outlets. And it's super cool to see somebody like you go from just having your regular 9 to 5, discovering something that you really care about. Because realistically, a lot of people's 9 to 5s are for a company that they don't actually emotionally feel anything for. It's strictly a paycheck, which I get. And I'm not trying to blame people for that. That's totally fine. But when you can find something that you really enjoy to put your time into that makes you feel fulfilled, it really gives a lot more meaning to like your life as a whole. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you'll tend to see a lot of people that do things they really care about for a living and that are self-employed work way too much. And it's because they really love everything they're doing. You can still get burnt out even if you really love what you're doing.
Oh, for
but
sure.
I think when somebody can identify something like that, that brings just so much more to like your life in general. So snakes they do make good pets. But there's like only so much that they can do, right? Like you're not supposed to handle them all the time. When you feed them, you're not supposed to handle them right around that time frame. Realistically, you have to try to keep them in a space where they have the right kind of heat and humidity. And there's kind of a lot that goes into it for an animal that you don't really like play with necessarily all the time. So they do make good pets for some people, maybe not for other people. What are some kind of misconceptions about owning a snake? What is it about owning a snake that makes it a good pet in your opinion for you? And like who would a snake be a good pet for? Who maybe is not the right owner of a snake?
So a big thing I try to focus with like younger people would be for parents buying their kids snakes, try to teach them that this is a responsibility thing because snakes are super easy. I don't want to like downplay it and say like it's so easy because that'll just make it seem like you don't have to do anything, and that's not true, and that's why I ended up with so many snakes. So realistically, I don't want to put it that way, but they're not a lot of responsibility, but they're a consistent responsibility. It's every week you need to feed them, every week you need to change them, their bedding and all that. It's a consistent schedule. So it teaches kids that. If you can help teach your kids that consistency of, oh, I owe a bill this week, or I owe this, or I have to do this every week. I have to get up and go to work every day. I have to, just that repetitive consistency and responsibility is where snakes come in for a good pet in my mind for kids, because of that, being able to teach them something, as well as it is a visual cool thing to look at. Not many people have snakes. I mean, I've noticed a lot more people have snakes than you really realize, but it's not like a cat or dog. Not every house in America has at least one of them. So to be that kid with the snake could be a cool factor to some kids. It could help the kid that's quiet stand out, and to teach him a responsibility in that process. Well, he's got something cool chilling on his desk with him while he plays video games every day, like I did when I was a kid. Like, that part is cool for me. For adults, I would say it's mostly just a visual thing. That's where it comes in for me, like why I like them. I like looking at them mostly. I don't take them out every day and hang out with them. Because we have so many, we are interacting with them constantly throughout the week and on and off. I guess each snake probably gets held and interacted with every day or every other day at minimum, but it's for a cleaning or something quick. It's not always just hanging out with them, because we have a lot of snakes. It's just not realistic. But for other people, like I said, I don't know if they really feel personality-wise or feel emotion or say they love you per se, but you'll have a snake that gets used to a certain thing, gets used to getting pulled out and hanging out on the couch around your neck or whatever. So, like, you can do those kinds of things. You could come home every day after work and pop open a beer, or roll up a joint and put a snake around your neck and go for it. Like, it is an adult relaxing thing, but it's mostly visual. So I would say anyone that's looking to get into something they can stare at. For like me, I'm autistic, so being able to just focus on something randomly, you know, throughout the day, you walk by and you just look at it, have it crawl around you and zone out. It can be super, super helpful. So there's a lot of different ways that snakes hit per se, but I wouldn't say you ever want to get one just because it's the easy pet, because it leads to dead animals. Simply put, you're going to end up with a dead snake every time if it's just because you want an easy pet.
Sure. Where were you able to learn, and where can people learn a lot of the information that they need so they're educated going into making that decision and learning how to take care of their pet? Obviously, YouTube University is the best, is a really great resource, but what are some resources and stuff that were helpful to you that other people might find value in?
So like you said, YouTube is a huge help. Whether it be looking up other hobbyist breeders and just seeing how they do it, because realistically, that's what you want to emulate. Breeders that have gotten into the hobby and been in it for 10 plus years, maybe they're not a huge name in the industry, but they've been doing it consistently for a while. Those are the people you really want to ask questions to if you have questions, because they've already gone beyond that step. They've tried to simulate the wild aspect and then also conformed it to what we can do, because you can't simulate Africa. We can't just create an African desert or plains in our bedroom, but we can try to get it as close as possible and simulate things. And they've already done that process. So reaching out to the people you get the snake from is a big thing. But at the same time, I say that, and people are going to ask their PetSmart and Petco employees and stuff. And those people just have jobs like you and I. You know, well, I guess not like you, you're a
Not
business
like me,
owner,
but yeah.
Like they have a job like me, a day job. They just go there, they do their job, and they go home. They don't genuinely care. Some of them do. You'll get a random pet store here and there that's got an awesome employee that started with that passion, you know, and they're like, I don't care if it's a Petco. I'm going to go there. I'm passionate about animals and I'm going to work with animals. And they do that, and they could probably give you awesome advice, but most employees aren't going to be the one to give you advice. They'll sell you an animal. I'm not promoting against buying an animal at Petco or PetSmart. I've bought animals there. I'll probably buy animals there again in the future. I'm not against it, but I'm against taking their word. Don't grab that pamphlet off the wall. Don't conform to that standard of a PetSmart employee or a Petco or a pet shop even. Most pet stores just aren't hands-on with the animals. They deal with a multiple variety, from dogs to hamsters to snakes, like fish, everything. So they're not as focused and dedicated to making sure that that animal thrives and survives.
Right.
As per se, like I said, I've had tons and tons and tons of help throughout this hobby, from people that are in Vegas, Las Vegas ball pythons, to Page's pythons here in Wausau, Wisconsin, Top Moon, who's over in Appleton, people all over the country that have just been a super big help, that aren't the names on YouTube. They aren't the ones blowing up making millions off of this, but they're the ones that are passionate about this, that do this for the animals. Like, I haven't made a penny off of a ball python or lizard for that fact. We do it because we love it.
Right. Well, and that's where it comes from with this type of thing, right? Eventually, if you want to, eventually you'll get better and better and better at it, where your time is valuable and ultimately you can do more good. Even though it has to have some money involved, you can do more good by doing it full time as a business than you can, you know, if you have a 9-to-5 job that has to take all this focus away. So that is a funny game to kind of like try to like play that. And absolutely, the people at these stores, you just need to remember, doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just means that the requirements to get that job and the general expectations of that job aren't being an expert in this particular animal. It's like if you were to go to Walmart and expect a random employee to be able to give you all the information possible about a video gaming system. Maybe they do. It's real
Coulda
possible
never
that
touched
employee
one.
is, but it's really possible they don't know anything about it either, because that's not part of how they're hired. That's just not it. So if you can go and you can talk to somebody who is like really does care about it, and it's pretty obvious to figure out who really is. A lot of these people, especially in the animal world, because there's so much emotion attached to it, because we're talking about lives. Granted, it's not people's lives, but still it is lives involved. These people will help out for free a lot of times. You know what I mean? Just because they want to make sure that the animals are put in a good position. So I have to ask this, because you're the first, I guess, business owner. It is a business that's like new. You're the first one I've talked to that's autistic. How has that been? Has that been a challenge? Has that been beneficial? How has that like affected trying to do it?
It doesn't affect my life at all, honestly. No. I guess a lot of the sales and stuff, interactions that I have with people are online.
Sure.
And like one-on-ones. And I have Asperger's, which is way low down on the spectrum.
Okay.
And social cues, groups of people, things like that are big troubles for me. And I don't really run into that as much. And even at reptile expos, where there's a lot of people, something about it being those people, there's a stigma behind the reptile community.
Right.
The people look at us differently. For
Sure.
some reason, I don't know why, and I did it when I was younger too. You just look at the guy with a tarantula or a snake around his neck as the oddball.
Right.
He could be a totally normal guy that just
Yeah.
likes that instead of dogs. And like being able to realize that and realize that I'm one of those, like I don't play video games. I'm not like when I was a kid, I thought of reptile people as almost like that nerd group, the dark group. And like, I'm not that at all. And I absolutely love reptiles. It's my number one passion now, other than my kids. Like it's reptiles. And then I don't even know what I would put after that. Like I haven't found something that's as important to me as reptiles and my kids. So finding people that were outcasts and kind of fall into that group of, well, I don't really belong anywhere, I just like reptiles, is really, really cool.
Yeah.
And really helpful for me. It's helped a lot with that. Like, because most people I go to, I meet and talk to, like, I don't share an interest per se. Like,
Yeah.
other than this podcast, realistically, like you're into skateboarding and such. You're not a smoker. You don't do the snake thing. So like we probably don't have a lot of our base hobbies and base interests in common.
Sure.
So it would be harder to break that gap. You know, we're obviously doing that now through doing this podcast, but me getting over that gap and getting past that and talking to people is really, really, really hard. And having that common interest has been a super, super helpful part.
Well, and I would say, man, the outcast group of people, and there's a lot of different groups of it. I'll use an example of, I watched a lot of anime growing up. Like I loved Dragon Ball Z. That was like the thing. Loved it. Yu Yu Hakusho. There's like a bunch of different shows. When I was in college, my college roommate convinced me to join the anime club. And I was like, I don't know about that. Went. Everyone was super, super cool, you know, and I was never really part of that kind of crowd, but all of a sudden I kind of was. A couple of years later, my buddy was like, hey, you should go to Anime Detour, which is like this big anime convention in Minneapolis. And I was like, dude, I don't know. Because in my opinion, from the outside view, the stigma that's around it was like, there's going to be a bunch of 45-year-old overweight men dressed as Sailor Moon, and it's going to be creepy, and it's going to be weird, and it's going to smell bad. Like that was just like what I thought it was for whatever reason. And he convinced me, no, just go. It's going to be really fun. It's basically just like a cool Halloween party. Like we'll dress up. So we did. It's a weekend long. It's at this hotel. You get a room, and yeah, it was like a weekend long Halloween party, basically. You know.
Right.
But what I found was, these were the nicest, most accepting, most welcoming people I've like ever been around. And I think it's because they weren't like the cool people before. None of them have any kind of ego at all. So nothing you do is going to really turn them away and be like, oh, this guy's not cool enough to talk to me. They're just like the most welcoming people,
They
which
grew
is
up
cool.
with that stigma.
That's what I'm saying. So I feel like that is the same general thing with the reptile community. You all know you're kind of outcast. So you're like, well, we're all like doing this cool thing together. So, you know, whatever. And I think what I found through the show, Because I used to think that was how it was with like skateboarding, right? Like how you're talking about, you find somebody else that's into reptiles, you have this common connection, you could talk to somebody, you could be visiting a friend in Washington and meet someone who has a snake, and now you guys are friends because you have like this common interest. That's how it is with skateboarding, right? We think it's like this big community. And then I realized for me, that is one way for sure. But what I realized actually talking to Miles Boulevard, which you said you listened to that episode, the very first episode ever, which is dope. Although a lot of times when I tell people about my show, they go back and listen to the first episode, which is great, except I definitely have gotten better at the show since then. Nothing to take away from Miles Boulevard. He's still the homie and it's still rad, but it's a better show.
Right. It's like anything.
Yeah. But anyways, what I found was through the show, I connect with people who are doing something they care about because I do something I care about. And that is a connection in itself. So now all of a sudden the hobby doesn't really matter, right?
Right.
Because the reason the hobby matters is because you guys both care about the same thing. But we still both care about the same thing. We care about doing something we care about. You know what I mean? So inadvertently you end up like finding where that is regardless. Okay, so when we get towards the end of the show, I always ask this because I think is the best part of the show. When you do things that you really care about, you get to have really unique experiences, and those experiences are really rewarding. And really, like when you do something you care about, it's usually not a lot of money involved, and there's a lot of work that goes into it before any kind of money gets involved. So it's not the money that you really get excited about, and it's not the money that's really rewarding. It's other experiences that you have that other people aren't really gonna have. Right. And I've had a lot of really cool experiences. I was just talking to you about how I interviewed Blake Johnson, which is also on this season. It would have came out before this episode, out in Venice at his mom's apartment. This dude's a professional skateboarder. I remember watching him, like his video part of going pro in my shop, and I was like, damn, this dude has so much power in his skating. This dude's so cool. Pro skateboarders to me are kind of like celebrities, even though they really aren't to other people. To me, they kind of are because of spending so much time in that industry. And because of my show, I now can be peers with people like that. Right. And that to me is like super, super special. For you, what's an experience that you got to have that you're super grateful for that only happened because you chose to pursue this passion for snakes?
I honestly don't have a very great answer for you. So realistically, it's just the people I've met. Meeting people from different, I guess, generations, different walks of life that all share this one common interest. That I have a ball python group on Facebook, actually. It's not like a Facebook group or anything, but it's a group chat with 15-ish ball python breeders from just around the state. There's a couple from Illinois or whatever, just Midwest breeders. And they're all smaller breeders that are similar stories to me, started recently. Some of them have been doing it for a while, but most of them are pretty recent. And we just sit and talk for hours about the dumbest things. It could be snakes all the way to jokes, anything we can imagine, like I've actually built a group of friends based off of ball pythons and breeding, and I've asked some of those friends favors that I can't ask my friends that live down the road, because they've never had my back like these people will. And that's mind-blowing to me that there's people that I've never met face to face that on my worst day will help me. Yeah. They've sent money. They've, with no questions, just genuine people that will give you the last dollar they have to make sure that everything's good at home, make sure that you're doing all right. And I think that comes from that stigma too. A lot of these people have grown up with that as their way of life and their standard. I've never been the lucky guy. I've never been rich. I've never had any of that. So to have friends and people that are willing to help and actually care is a life-changing thing, and people that have shared the same experiences over time.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to find a home like that is so special. And I always tell people there's like obviously billions of people out there, and I think people generally speaking have a good heart, but when you can find people that really care about you, that's really, really, really special. Those people don't pop around too often. Thankfully, through the power of the internet, which is an incredible tool for good or bad, depending how you use it, but incredible tool, it gives us this option to be able to come together over things like this. And that's what I love. Honestly, like, I don't love Facebook as an organization, even though Instagram's like a big part of what I do. And obviously they own that, but like how they've been doing all their new commercials where it's based around like groups, that really is the power of what social media does, because I've made a lot of really cool friends exclusively through Instagram. The fact that I know you is exclusively through Instagram. And like, I don't know about you, but I've had a great time tonight, like taking
100%.
pictures of snakes and stuff. And like, this has been really cool. I don't really know that much about them. So this only happened because of it. And I can actually say through my show, you know, yeah, it's like a network to a certain degree. I've become really good personal friends with a lot of the guests, because you don't really sit down and have this type of conversation with very many people. It's just not often. You know, your family will ask you about it and they'll pay attention for 5 minutes. And then they go on about the party they were at, or they go on about whatever. But you don't have like a really in-depth, genuine conversation about things you really care about with very many people.
Most people just don't care.
Because they don't, right? So like that's the power, is like being able to have that. That's awesome. Totally agree with you. And yeah, I have friends all over the country now because of that. You know what I mean? So on the flip side of that, I think the easiest way that you learn is through making mistakes, right? And you saw, and I'm not going to say it's a mistake, right? But you know, the animal that you had, the second one that you weren't able to take care of, well, like you weren't able to nurse it back enough. Anyways, it's those things that like really stick out to you that like are powerful, and you're like, oh, okay, now I learned something from it. You know, if everything was just easy, you wouldn't learn much, and down the road, you wouldn't be as, you know, skillful as you are, whatever. You wouldn't have learned as much. So mistakes are the way to learn. However, if you can avoid them and you can learn from other people's mistakes, that's nice. So this part of the show, I try to get with that. What's a story about a mistake that you made that you learned something from that somebody listening might be able to benefit from?
So without diving back into some of the things we've already kind of touched on, a biggest thing for me would be, I guess, kind of adds on to the last topic, social media, Facebook groups and things like that. Like I said, ask a reputable breeder for information. Don't go on some Facebook group and ask some people that have been throwing their snake in way too big of a tank for years and have it on dirt, or, you know, there's so much misinformation out there that once people get in a way where it works for them, you know, they haven't seen failure, and whether it be a 1 snake experience or 20 snake experience, you know, those people just haven't seen their method fail yet, where others have seen it be detrimental over and over again over a length of time, versus I've had ball pythons for 3 years, nothing's ever happened, I know what I'm talking about. And that's what you find on Facebook groups. That's what most of forums even sadly are, is that kind of arrogant in a way. Like they think they know it right away, and you can never stop learning. You can't. Every single day, every time I talk to a new ball python breeder or a new person, I'm learning something new. I'm learning a different method of, whether it be how to talk to people, how to run my business snake-wise, how to take care of the animals, whatever it may be. Like, you're constantly learning, and if you stop that and you just put up that wall of I know it all, you lose that battle every time. Like, you just sound arrogant, you look dumb, and you're not helping anybody in the end. So the biggest mistake, because I jumped right on it, I was Ball Python World and World of Ball Pythons and all the Facebook groups, and it's super destructive. You end up arguing with people back and forth about, oh, this way is right, or this way is right, or whatever. You gotta just kind of gauge off of multiple things and then make a decision that works for you ethically, morally, and just physically. You know, your animals have to be okay. So that's the biggest mistake I made, was diving into Facebook groups and not taking information from people that had a name behind them, taking people's information that just wanted to give it.
Yeah, everyone's got an opinion, right? And I remember Cashanova's a rapper, and I had him on the show. He's like a relatively big Minneapolis rapper. He plays soundset and stuff. And I think this was just a story one time I saw on his Instagram feed. I'm going to butcher exactly how he said it, but he basically said, stop listening to the opinion of people who haven't done what you're trying to do. And that was really powerful that he said that, because he's right. People all the time tell me what they think I should do. But and it's not that they aren't. Some of these people have their heart in the right place and they want me to succeed. They do. But on what basis does that person really know what I should be doing?
Right.
They have not done that. So why do they think that they know? It's just like their gut. So it's not that you shouldn't take your friends and family's opinion. You shouldn't take anyone's opinion from Facebook or whatever to heart. You can, however, take it with a grain of salt, right? How much does this person really know? If they don't have the background to show that they really know, then it's just their opinion, and that's cool, and that's all it is then. So in my opinion, this is how it works, like with skateboarding for one. If you want to get better at skateboarding, the best way is to skateboard with people who are better than you.
100%.
Because you learn all the things that they're doing. You know what I mean? So my opinion is to look for people who are doing, because there's always somebody doing it better than you. There's always somebody more knowledgeable than you. There's always somebody more successful than you in any kind of way. Try to surround yourself with those types of people. Reach out to those types of people when you need help, and realize their opinion is much more important. Their expertise is a lot better than 100 of these other people on Facebook. Even if all those people on Facebook had the best intentions, they're just not the right person to ask for this particular thing.
Right.
So totally agree with you. At the end of the show, so where else, again, if you want to give the shout out, where can people find you, follow the things you're doing, see these cool snakes that just hatched? What's kind of coming up? What can they see once they start following you? What's going to be coming up in the next however many months, year? And then how can people support you, I guess, moving forward? They're going to listen to this episode and they're like, dude, this guy's been doing all this for free. This is dope. How can they get involved or support in any kind of way?
So for us, Instagram's the biggest key for just following what we're doing in general. Whether it be you want to buy a snake, you can message us on Instagram and inquire. Like I said, this is our first year, so our selection's pretty thin. We have one of the 4 snakes that's even going to be sold. We have one giveaway that we ran early on. We said we would give away a snake from our first clutch, so we're doing that. And then the other 2 are too cool to do anything with. They're going to be with us forever. We've named them PB and J, and they're our mascots. So Instagram's going to be the biggest way you can find us. And then on our Instagram, there's a Linktree link that will bring you to like our Morph Market page where you can look at our snakes that we have available. There's nothing on there right now, but that's where you would find that. And then it's got our merchandise and anything else like that you would want is all pretty much central to Instagram, because Instagram's a super, super cool place, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very helpful tool. So to support things, there's a lot of ways to do it. People can obviously do it monetarily. Money is just a tool. It is an extremely helpful tool. So
right.
it's a preferred tool for a lot of people, me included, but it's not the only one. And not everybody always has money to give. If you have money to give, Patreon is my preferred thing. Patreon.com/passionpod. You can find it in the link tree on my Instagram, which is @passionpod. If you somehow don't follow me but listen to the show, which I'd be surprised by, but if you do. So on there, you can pick different tiers. $5 a month is like the minimum. It's the smallest it lets me do. Really, like $5 a month is like buying me 1 cup of coffee. If you listen to the show every week, I hope that you got 4+ hours of entertainment, and maybe you're willing to buy me a coffee in exchange. But there's also a bunch of extra benefits. I do a bunch of giveaways. There's bonus episodes on there. There's an exclusive group on Instagram. Like there's an exclusive page just for being a Patreon patron, where I'll post that I'm talking to a guest coming up, so you can submit questions for it, get your name shouted out. There's all kinds of cool ways to do it. PassionPod.org, again in the link tree. There's all kinds of merchandise that you can buy. Passion Board Shop in Eau Claire, the local skateboard shop. That's my business. That's what I do. So you can roll down there and you can get a board, or you can get a shirt, or you can do, whatever. But you can also just share my content. like, that's great. If you love the show, share it with your friends. That makes a huge difference. Writing reviews well, you could write reviews for my show or for my shop, even on Google, but writing a review on Apple Podcasts is a huge way. There's a lot of ways to do that. So for you, what's the best way? If somebody was like, I really, really like this episode, how can they best support you, whether it's monetary or not?
So sadly, there's not a lot of non-monetary ways to really share something like this per se, because we're not open. We don't, I don't know, like you have something to listen to, something you can, etc. But the biggest thing for us is just going to be sharing us. We don't have a huge name. We don't really want a huge name, I guess, per se. We would like more of that quality name. So just telling your friends about us, because we are, like I said, all of our normal ball python sales will get donated to USARK, which is the huge #1 reptile fighting force, I guess you could say, to sum it up. And then locals also receive a 20% discount on all snakes. So if you can prove that you live here in Eau Claire, I'll throw you a discount, because I just want the local love. I want people to stay out of pet shops. That's another thing you could do. Whether it be me or another breeder throughout the country, I don't need you to buy a snake from me. But if you're gonna buy a reptile, try to look into one of those sources before you ever walk into the pet store. And then walk into the pet store and buy your supplies. And then walk out and go get your animal. Because it means more to me seeing people with successful, happy animals than ever receiving any kind of money. So I guess those are the bigger ways you can do the non-monetary. But other than that, like I said, we have Morph Market. You can reach out to buy a snake. We've got merch on our spring tee, which is like t-shirts and sweatshirts, whatever. We have dab mats that we sell. We have all kinds of different merchandise and random little things that we do to try to keep this going and keep us funded, because it's an expensive hobby.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Passion Pod. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. We'll see you soon.